Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. The voice has not returned. I did return, though, from Las Vegas, Nevada, so I'm happy to be with you on this Monday, January the 26th. And today's program is going to be a little bit heavy. We're going to be going through how the hell we got here. If you guys have not been paying attention, over the weekend, we had a shooting in Minneapolis. You guys probably saw that in the headline. If this is news to you, I'm sorry. There was a shooting done by ICE. It's not nearly as cut and dry or clean as what we saw in the Renee Good shooting. Nobody is going to be celebrating, at least not on this program, the loss of human life. But the problem is that we've now got a situation where I think it's inevitable. I think we're going to see more of it. And I don't think that we've even come close to just like the high water mark of what's going on right now in Minneapolis, despite the fact that we're talking about people protesting in sub-freezing conditions. People are getting riled up and they're upset in a way that is not previously seen in this kind of temperatures. Usually we see this kind of stuff happen in summer. We call it riot season. That's a reason. Folks are definitely keyed up. I think there's a reason why, and I think the politicians are playing into this right now. And so I've got some examples of that. What I'm not going to do on this particular program, on this podcast, because it lends itself only to a visual medium, is go down on a shot-by-shot basis or a frame-by-frame basis and tell you whether I think this shooting is justified. I actually don't know. So if those of you who have already got an opinion about that, that's fine. I don't think there's enough information to make that determination yet. As usual, as we often do here, I will refer to you to the deadly force policies, and I'll explain to you what that is. I do have the stabilized version of this shooting. The question I have is, what did the officer who actually pulled the trigger see? And I don't know. And it's not obvious to me from the outside camera angles. So we're going to get into that. I don't know whether or not there's any sort of training that involves disarming someone in the middle of a skirmish. And I've never had that kind of training. Usually we've had sort of like compliant subject with gun. I've never seen non-compliant subject with gun with multiple people trying to take him into custody and then someone tries to pull the gun out in the middle of that skirmish. I just don't know what it looks like. So if DHS has some training on that, if ICE has done that, that's another story. I'm actually looking forward to seeing some of your comments. So if you're a law enforcement officer and you have a policy about or your agency had a policy about disarming people in the middle of a hand-to-hand fight or something where you've gone to the ground and you're trying to get someone into custody, I'm very interested in knowing what that is. And I don't know what happened if there was an ND or what's called a negligent discharge. If that was the case, I don't know what happens there. I don't know who might get charged. There's a lot that goes on in this video. This one is definitely not cut and dry. What is cut and dry is that I think we're going to see an aggressive move by this administration to continue to ratchet up the tensions. I think that's actually really bad. I think it's bad for us as Americans. And then consider the future of this. I think this is where this goes. Here's an uncomfortable prediction. I posted this on X, and I need you guys to understand. I think that based on everything I hear from Democrats, when they take back government, whenever that is, because it's inevitable, there will be a take back of government. It's not going to be Republicans forever, nor should it necessarily be. When it goes to a Democrat administration, I think you can expect, just like we saw on January 6th, we're going to see retribution from that side, and they will hunt down the folks who are working on behalf of ICE right now, and they will use the FBI to do it. I'll just let you think about that for a second. I floated that theory to some of my buddies that are in the FBI, and they said these conversations are already happening between people in DHS. This is Homeland Security Investigations. This is ICE. This is, the other sort of DHS components. They are already considering the probability that the FBI will be asked to go after people from ICE, and they will do so using the very same instrument they use to go after everybody else. The FBI is such a political tool, and it's such a problem. When I talk about it as being an existential threat to American liberty, I mean it in that way. It will go after J6ers. It will currently be going after so-called leftist Antifa type protesters. And they are already doing that. You're not hearing a lot of coverage of it, but it's happening. And I think they will also go after ICE agents and people who worked inside the federal government under this administration. Probably low-level people, because the high people end up getting away with it. That's really scary for America. I'm also going to blame Alex Jones for my voice, because the last time I spoke with him, he had laryngitis, just some strain. I'm not sick. I just sound like it because I've been yelling at a convention center in Las Vegas, Nevada. So anyway, we're going to get into today's program. I hope you guys are ready for I think a sobering discussion of this. It's not emotional, and I'm not emotional about it. I don't feel strongly about a lot of things other than I'm a Second Amendment absolutist. So we're going to talk about that and what is the Second Amendment position if you come from principles, which I try to do, and I'm going to do my best to do that now. All right. Let's also talk about my friends over at My Patriot Supply. The website is mypatriotsupply.com/KYLE. We're into winter now. It has actually gotten cold here in Texas for the first time, and they don't know how to deal with it locally. We've got ice on the roads, and nobody is out there scraping it. Nobody is plowing the streets because I don't even think there's any snowplows in Texas. So if the power goes out here, it's going to get really cold. And luckily, my wife and I have already planned ahead on what we're going to do. Ask yourself this question. If you're in a place like me where it's generally temperate, maybe you're like Steve Friend and you're complaining because it's below 60 degrees. You ask yourself, hey, do we have a way to keep our family warm if the power goes out? It can be life-threatening. It's happened in Texas before. People lost their lives in the cold. This is why Americans have an opportunity to protect themselves, and My Patriot Supply offers the Vesta off-grid space heater. It's a space heater that doesn't use electricity. It doesn't run on propane. It runs on something called canned heat, which is an indoor safe fuel. That means you can burn it inside. You can keep yourself warm. You can keep it stashed in your closet in case you need it. Hopefully the power doesn't go out here. But even if it does, we're going to be all right. It doubles as a cook stove. It's pretty cool for that. The best part is now you can get it with a bunch of other preparedness gear and free gifts when you order the winter survival kit from My Patriot Supply. The website is mypatriotsupply.com/KYLE. If you're watching on TV or if you're seeing it on your computer screen, there's a little QR code. You're welcome to scan that. It will take you right there to take a look at what they offer in this particular kit. Again, check out mypatriotsupply.com/KYLE. There's already been cold dropping in here. I hope we don't lose power, but if we do, we're going to be squared away in the Seraphin house. Make sure you guys are squared away too. For those of you that have all kinds of other options, you already know. Link in the show description. Let's get into today's program starting now. All right, I am going to try to approach this from principles. I guess we can start with the video. Maybe we do a story that's not this first. And it continues to be kind of a frustrating story of mine. It's the ongoing weaponization of this government. It's the ongoing sort of letdown from the campaign promises. I'm going to read something and not put it on the screen if you guys are okay with it. I pulled it from one of our listeners actually shared this with me. I got to find this. There it is. Trump campaign promises. These were things that were made during the campaign, and I want to evaluate people based on their own words. I don't want to make up things that just I think of. 20 campaign promises to the American people, agenda number 47. All right. We'll go to the chat and put you guys on the window here. Number 1, seal the border, stop the migrant invasion. I think they did pretty good on that. Number 2, carry out the largest deportation operation in American history. We are falling flat on that one. And right now, that seems to be the most contentious thing from the left, and it's creating a lot of these problems. Number 3, end inflation, make America affordable again. I'm going to call that a no. They may have dropped the rate of inflation, but a 2% inflation rate means it continues to inflate our currency. So your money is still worth less, one way or another. I don't know that the president can solve that, but they made the promise, not me. Make America the dominant energy producer in the world by far. That's still, we'll see. Stop outsourcing and turn the United States into a manufacturing superpower. That one is also pretty mixed right now. We'll give them some more time on that. Large tax cuts for workers, no tax on tips. That seems like that was a 50-50 delivery. We're on to number 6. Here's where I'm going to get really concerned. Number 7, defend our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, our fundamental freedoms, including the freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to keep and bear arms. I'm going to give them a C+ at best. And this discussion that we're going to have today in light of a guy who had a concealed carry license in Minnesota being killed by ICE agents in a way that looks awful. Just for everyone's awareness, I understand that it looks really bad. That doesn't mean that it doesn't meet the legal standard for ICE to shoot. It just tells me, in the same way as the FBI conducting a raid in Provo, Utah, because some guy put some threats online and was saying things that were not nice about Joe Biden. When the FBI's SWAT teams went in first thing in the morning and they killed him, it's probably a legally justifiable shoot, just so we're all on the same page. There's no one that faces charges on those things. It doesn't mean that I agree with what happened. And I think this is this whole story of this man named Alex Pretti, and he was apparently an ICU nurse in the VA, and he was a mountain biker or a cyclist and some other things. Like, he seems like he was the kind of guy that was involved in this protest, but he probably had the right to be there and do the things, even though the Trump administration is saying otherwise. And I'm honing in on this number 7 because Constitution, Bill of Rights, fundamental freedoms, freedom of speech, right to keep and bear arms, the 1A and the 2A are not mutually exclusive. You don't get to speak or carry a gun. You can do both. 100% you can do both. And so I have a real problem with that. And again, this is on the campaign promises, not mine. These are Trump's. So I just wanted to point them out. Prevent World War III. We'll see. So far, okay, sounds good. Number 9, end the weaponization of government against the American people. This is abject failure so far. It is an absolute failure of the Trump administration thus far to end weaponized government. And I'm going to point out that the mindset has immediately shifted. They've abandoned that particular promise, and I think that's really scary. All right, stop the migrant crime epidemic. That's going to be related to getting rid of all the illegals, and they haven't done that yet. And they're obviously facing headwinds from the state side. All right, rebuild cities, Washington, D.C., make them clean, safe, and beautiful. I don't even know if that's achievable. That's a weird promise to make. It's probably unlikely because that's not the federal government's business. Strengthen and modernize the military. Okay, they can do that. They're spending a lot of money. Keep the world reserve currency as the U.S. dollar. Maybe. Fight and protect Social Security and Medicare with no cuts, including no changes to the retirement age. Isn't that funny? Donald Trump loves to try to protect certain entitlements because, again, he's not a conservative. He's not like me. Donald Trump is a 90s Democrat. This is the discussion that I had with some folks at the New York Times when they wanted to call me a far-right podcaster. And the whole point is that there's nothing far-right about the idea that I pretty much hold most ideas in common with 90s Democrats. Donald Trump doesn't sit on the opposite side of the spectrum from me. It just turns out that spectrum has gotten wider and moved further to the left. Then he has some things about electric vehicles, funding for schools with critical race theory, keeping men out of women's sports. A lot of this stuff has no business in the federal government. I'm just reading these so you guys know what I'm evaluating the Trump administration on whenever I look at it. And it's mostly because I want to evaluate it based on what they claimed they were going to do. They said they're going to deport Hamas radicals, make the college campuses safe and patriotic. Again, I'm not 100% sure that the deporting thing, sure, but what the federal government has to do with college campuses is a little bizarre. Secure the elections. Include same-day voting, voter ID, paper ballots, and proof of citizenship. That should be something that is way higher on the list than number 19 of 20. The last one is unite the country and bring us record levels of success. I just wanted you to think about those 20 promises that were made during the administration's campaign. Because a lot of them are either unachievable and always were, or they have made zero headway on it. Before we jump into the Alex Pretti thing, let's talk about a major success that the FBI is touting. They grabbed a guy who they've tried to make out to be a quote unquote modern day Pablo Escobar. I'm quoting the FBI director right now. And interestingly enough, Pablo Escobar was a modern day figure as well. So Kash doing what Kash Patel often does, which is say words that have no meaning. They probably sounded really cool in his head. But when you aspire to Valhalla, then you often make yourself look like a complete goofy Norse clown. He doesn't really have the Viking helmet that he thinks he does. It's probably the downward horn version. All right. All that is to say, they captured another top 10 most wanted fugitive. For those of you that are playing well at home, and I'll probably do this with Steve Friend on Friday, the top 10 most wanted list for the FBI, it's a PR marketing tool, and it always has been. Nobody decides what's the objective standard to get on the top 10. They actually have multiple top 10s, and the general game is you try to move somebody onto the top 10 when you think you're going to be able to catch them, and then you say, aha, we've captured somebody, and he was a top 10 most wanted fugitive. And so then you can be really proud of yourself. That's what he does. The interesting thing is when you start defending the idea of intelligence. I told you that my biggest concern is weaponization of federal government. It continues to be an ongoing theme of this podcast. That weaponized government means government that serves its own interest. It doesn't serve the interest of the people, and it doesn't necessarily even serve the interest of a party, except when that party aligns with the interest of the government entity itself. Number 9 of the 20 promises to the American people on Agenda 47 was end the weaponization of government against the American people. I want you guys to consider this most recent top 10 most wanted catch, where yes, the guy turned himself in and the FBI didn't actually have to do it. I want you to consider it in terms of de-weaponization and previous claims that were made, previous promises made. We can leave the Trump agenda for a second and look specifically at Kash Patel, who was campaigning in no uncertain terms for a spot in this administration, and then whether or not he's lived up to it. And that would be something I would recommend we do against all these people, whether you like them or not, whether you think you like them or not. The parasocial relationship aside, where you have this one-sided social media relationship with somebody that you don't actually know. Did they actually live up to the words that they promised? That's how we should evaluate people.
It truly is a historic achievement when you think about it. But SAC Barnacle's absolutely right. To find bad guys around the world, to find the worst of the worst hiding in Mexico, you have to use intelligence. You have to gain intelligence every step of the way at the state level, at the local level, at the federal level. You got to share that intelligence with our partners in Mexico. Then you have to join forces and combine operations and go hit the ground hard and relentlessly. And Charlotte and your local police force and our partners here made sure we never forgot it. And that's the importance of the representation of the interagency-wide process that led us to this perpetrator in Mexico. It truly is a historic achievement when you think about it. 10 years have passed, and we found him.
All right, let's give credit where it's due. Multicam black hats are pretty cool. So Kash wearing a black multicam hat, I'm a fan of the hat. I'm not a fan of almost anything he said, though. He just gave a bunch of credit to himself and to Donald Trump and to the administration, when in fact, what are we talking about here? We're talking about something that he said in his own words, it took 10 years. This administration, especially the ones that are the most thirsty, that seem like they're on the edge of being fired at any moment, they are the ones that seem to be the ones most likely to take credit for things that have nothing to do with them. And of course, they don't say anything of value. What I did hear him say is that intelligence is really important and that we need to share intelligence and that we need to make sure that we're sharing intelligence all up and down the chain. We should actually really be worried about this sort of thing. It's an ongoing sort of premise of this podcast, for those of you that are new, that the ability to share intelligence, while there are some areas where it's necessary, it's actually the single biggest threat to American liberty. Having an intelligence agency, which the FBI considers itself, in the world, that when they also have the ability to go out and do like these arrests, when they actually have the ability to seize your life, they can, affect the arrest or the shooting somewhere in your own home. You've now taken the two elements that Sebastian Gorka pointed out to me maybe 2 years ago represent every single secret police that we've ever been able to recognize or be able to diagnose in modern history. National security tools, secret findings, non-due process related investigations, no articulation of crime involved, simply investigating people because they represent a quote unquote threat. The threat is not actually a crime. And then turning around and using those tools to effect an arrest, putting them in front of a, criminal trial, jury, judge, etc., and then having them go to prison for it. That's what secret police do. This is why I've got a big problem with it. Again, I'm going to let you play the first part of that little statement where he said about intelligence, and I'm going to have you contrast it to what he promised. This idea of promises unmet is a big deal to me.
It truly is a historic achievement when you think about it. But SAC Barnacle's absolutely right. To find bad guys around the world, to find the worst of the worst hiding in Mexico, you have to use intelligence. You have to gain intelligence every step of the way at the state level, at the local level, at the federal level. You got to share that intelligence with our partners in Mexico. Then you have to join.
This is the same guy that just told you not a year and a half ago that intelligence and the intelligence component of the FBI are the single biggest threat, the single biggest problem, the part of the footprint that needed to be reduced. So again, I want to hold people accountable to their own words. There are people that we knew were never going to step up and be heroes of liberty, the Pam Bondi types. Interestingly enough, we're now seeing people on the political left that are suddenly arguing in favor of the Second Amendment and arguing in favor of concealed carry, arguing in favor of being able to protest and be able to carry a firearm in public and so on and so forth. The same people that cried about the Heller decision and other things. Watch this Kash Patel moment where he kind of flips, and then we'll get into the shooting. That's not it. Here it is.
Then we need to decrease what I call government creep with personnel. The FBI's footprint has gotten so freaking big. And the biggest problem the FBI has come out of its intel shops. I'd break that component out of it. I'd shut down the FBI Hoover building on day one and reopening the next day as a museum of the deep state. And I'd take the 7,000 employees that work in that building and send them across America to chase down criminals. Go be cops. You're cops. Go be cops. Go chase down murderers and rapists and drug dealers and violent offenders. What do you need 7,000 people there for? Same thing with DOJ. What are all these people doing here? Looking for their next government promotion, looking for their next fancy government title, looking for their parachute out of government. So while you're bringing in the right people, you also have to shrink government.
So a massive government reform.
Yeah. And you got to work with Congress.
A massive government reform. Well, that would be really nice. I really wish they had done that. That would have made me really happy. Unfortunately, what you've seen is this guy try to get the entire agency funded to the same level it was previously. And all he's done is protect and defend the size of his own agency. Isn't it interesting how quickly people get taken over? I spent some time in Las Vegas. You guys I'm going to go get to the Alex Pretti thing in just a second here. I just spent time in Las Vegas, hence the voice. Everybody smokes everywhere in Las Vegas, which is not something I'm used to being around. So that kind of got me. And everything is loud. So, you carry your voice and then it just kind of goes away. I did have some neat chats with the folks at Gun Owners of America, and I've actually got a clip that I'm going to play in just a little bit from one of the gentlemen that I was speaking to in Vegas. There was this comment that was exchanged, and I don't actually remember who said it, but something to the effect of the problem with the way government works, the way that DC sort of functions, is the minute that we get one of our guys, I'm going to put one of our guys in air quotes, the minute we get one of our guys into government in a position of power or authority, they're no longer one of our guys. That perfectly encapsulates the way I feel about the way that Kash Patel has sort of turned on us. It's almost universal that you find, you ask somebody something, they tell you one thing, they get in a position to do something about it, and man, do they really let you down. Now, there may be something to be said about the realistic nature of the job and that you have to kind of, get in there and then realize, well, I don't actually have the authority or the power to do the things that I said. That's one thing. You could also say that, by the way. That's really easy to do. You just get up and say, hey, look, I had all these concepts. Now I realize that the reality of it is a little bit different, so I can't actually exercise that authority or power. But no, they're our guys right up until the point where they get to the ability to do the thing we hope they would do, and then suddenly they're no longer our guys. Isn't that interesting? And nothing is weirder than a guy who, when I talked to him in 2023, and if you guys don't know, I had a, not a deep personal relationship, but a legitimate personal relationship with Kash Patel. We spent time together at SHOT Show 3 years ago this month. In 2023, I went out to Las Vegas and I did the range day with SIG, and that was really neat. And I got to see a bunch of law enforcement guys and some new tools, which are, by the way, terrifying. Like 3 years ago, we had weapon systems that can use AI to track drones and shoot them with a minigun at 1,000 yards with crazy, crazy heavy 338 Lapuas and 300 Norma mags and stuff like that. If that means nothing to you, don't worry. I sat down to dinner with Kash Patel. He told me before we got there, hey, you want to go in the desert and shoot machine guns? We got friends with machine guns. We got places to go shoot. Kash Patel presented himself to me going back 3 years ago as a gun guy, as someone who understood the fundamental American liberties. I would imagine that if that was the case, it's like, okay, the 1A, you get to say anything you want. You should have an absolute ability to protest as long as you're not committing another crime. And that includes like not blocking streets where you shouldn't be, but you should be able to say the things you want in this country. I thought that's what we all sort of believed. I thought we were also on the same page when it came to things about the Second Amendment. And what we're finding out is this guy just says, I don't know, whatever's convenient to his cause, and it has nothing to do with principles. I'm going to play you this clip that came from Fox News. He went on another Maria Bartiromo clip. The first interview he sat down with Dan Bongino and the two of them talked to Maria, they devastated their credibility. Now it's sort of just assumed when you hear this guy talk that he's just mouthing whatever he thinks is effective and a talking point. And this is truly bizarre because if you sit in a position of principle, and I think I do, at least I aspire to stay on the same team. I can also say that you should 100% be able to show up to a protest and carry a weapon system and carry extra magazines if you're so inclined. I don't care. It's not relevant. He says some other dumb things too, because when he gets so excited about it, he'll end up saying a loaded handgun with 2 magazines. Did you load it with the 2 magazines? If so, can somebody please point me towards, I was all over SHOT Show. I saw 0 handguns that allow you to double load magazines. So if that's a thing outside of that, that 1911, that's 2 1911s that are melted together. You can put, 2 magazines at the same time. Other than that, I've never seen a weapon system where you can actually put 2 mags into the same gun. And of course, I'm being silly about it only because he keeps putting his foot in his mouth and he keeps saying things that sound politically neutral, but they're actually the opposite of all the principles that everybody thought he was going to be. It was almost universal. The folks that I met that were in law enforcement, that were in the firearms industry, people that came out of military, and everybody like that is all over SHOT. I mean, I ran into my old roommate from PJ Indoc, of all things. It's a neat little place. But the people that want to be left alone to exercise their own liberties, they want to be able to speak, they want to be able to think, they want to be able to go to church, they want to be able to carry the firearm system of their choice, whether it be a revolver like you see over my shoulder, or they want to be able to carry an AR with all kinds of capabilities and thermal. People just want to be left alone in that community, and they all were disappointed universally with Dan Bongino's performance, and we'll see what he does when he comes back to his podcast, and they were very, very let down by this guy, Kash Patel, who seems like he's willing to sell us all out the moment he get a chance to go on Fox News and say something dumb.
But as Secretary Noem said, no one who wants to be peaceful shows up at a protest with a firearm that is loaded with 2 full magazines. That is not a peaceful protest, and you do not get to touch law enforcement. You do that anywhere, this FBI is going to be leading the charge to arrest those.
But how was he threatening Border Patrol? You've collected the evidence, you said, right? You have the handgun in your possession?
That's right.
And how was he using that handgun in terms of threatening Border Patrol? What was the threat? He had his camera, right? He was filming it.
That's something that I will let the DHS and the prosecutors, because they are the ones investigating that case. I don't want to stylize that evidence, but I trust the men and women on the ground who are trained professionals to only use it when it's absolutely necessary. And I trust Secretary Noem's leadership and DHS and HSI to do the right thing, as they've always done in these scenarios. As Christy said, you cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest that you want. It's that simple. You don't have that right to break the law and incite violence.
What a bizarre series of statements. First of all, I don't know what stylizing the evidence is. Maybe some of you who are attorneys, or maybe someone who's been in law enforcement, for a longer period of time, or, I don't know. Can someone please tell me what stylized this evidence means? That'd be really helpful for me. I actually am not trying to be sarcastic about it. I think he misspoke. I think he's just dumb and he says words out loud that don't have any meaning. But in case it actually means something, will you put that please in a comment for me, so I can keep track of stylizing the evidence? He just made some really, really conflicting statements. And then when asked for evidence, you can't bring a gun to a protest. The Fox News, of all people, Maria Bartiromo asked very quickly, hey, what did he do to Border Patrol? What did he do to these ICE agents? What sort of action did he take that was threatening them? And he immediately said, I'm not actually doing this investigation. We're going to leave it to those men, and I'm sure that the government is always right. Isn't that what he just said? Didn't he just say that in some way? I heard him say that as they've always done, they're going to do the right thing. I'm pretty confident that's the whole reason why we wanted him in. The whole point of it was get in, de-weaponize, and we don't trust this government. And it's not because there was one political party in power or the other. It's for this concept that he actually wrote a book on: the deep state, the government gangsters, the administrative state, the people who do what weaponized government does. Weaponized government doesn't necessarily mean that you've taken the government and pointed it at your opponent. What it means is that it's serving its own interests. And oftentimes it's going to align with the political left because the left is more involved in building up bigger government. I mean, at least historically. It's such a strange moment for him to go out there. All he's done was fluff up the administration, fluff up Kristi Noem, who's got a cabinet position, so she's above him, fluff up the president's work. None of these things have any principle. I saw the video that you guys did. I'll play it in just a second here. I don't know what that guy did that justified what he was doing. Was he resisting? Yes. I'm not confident that he justified the use of deadly force. So I'm sitting in a weird spot because generally speaking, when I look out, I'm like, okay, well, I can see how they justified it and I'm going to explain it to you even if it's not great. But I'm not sure why someone came up and pushed a woman who had a camera. There's a lot of context that's missing. We need probably the last 60 to 90 minutes prior. It turns out your life before getting shot by a cop or a federal law enforcement officer, it actually is not all that relevant. You're a great mom, it doesn't matter. If you decide to do something dangerous and you present an imminent danger of death or serious physical injury to the officer or to another person, then you can be justified in the shooting, 100%. So it doesn't matter what your life was or that you loved puppies or that you volunteered and did Meals on Wheels. Like all those things are irrelevant. The moment that you present imminent danger of death or serious physical injury to the law enforcement officer or to another person, then they can shoot you. Fine, I get that. And that's the way that it works. I don't know what was the imminent danger of this guy. And everything that I see looks like we're dealing with potentially a disarm. And I'll show you that. It looks like one of the agents pulled the gun and then potentially had a negligent discharge, fired the gun on accident, or the gun went off. It's a SIG, so take that with a grain of salt. I don't know if that's true or not. But it sounds like the gun may have gone off, and that may have incited the other guys to shoot. In which case, we're in this really, really awful moment where somebody drew a gun, thought they were justified, and maybe shot a guy who was unarmed that shouldn't have been shot because somebody else made a mistake. And I don't know where the culpability lies on that. I've actually never seen that investigation done before. That's what we're looking at. And it turns out having an FBI director say a bunch of nonsense is awful. You know what's crazy? The chief of police in Chicago had the most sensible take on all this. And I'm going to save that for the end because I am going to sum this up with what I think the right answer is. And kind of a spoiler alert. It's like you can't fight with cops. They're still law enforcement. And also people have a right to carry a gun and they have a right to speak. So we've got a real tough scenario here where it's only going to look bad. And everybody seems to be polarizing left or right, whether or not you're going to have the administration people come up and say, everything we did is justified. Everything we do is correct and righteous. These people are terrorists. Well, that's one take, but it's not reality. And then the other side says, ICE wants to kill us. They're here to invade our state. They have no right to be here. And we need to start fighting back and killing them. And we need to destroy the hotels they live in. That's also not right. So America has never been further apart. And again, I'm going to go back to this 20 promises, Agenda 47, unite our country by bringing it new and record levels of success. That's not happening, folks. I don't think that was an achievable goal, to be fair, but Donald Trump said it, not me. Uniting this country is not happening at this exact moment. All right. We can all unite on the idea that if people can hunt you down and find you, it's not ideal. The folks that are doing this law enforcement work in Minneapolis may want to check out my friends over at Patriot Protect. Quick little read for them. And just a reminder that if you're not securing your data, then you're leaving it open to God knows what. And that's maybe not a great idea, especially if some of these guys are. Whether we're talking about scammers and criminals who raise the stakes in 2025, 2026, you do have a choice. We're starting the year off. You can start it off right, and you can make sure that you are out of the pile of potential leads where people can steal from you. The website is patriot-protect.com/KYLE. Use my name, Kyle, at checkout. You'll save 15% on an annual subscription, and they continue to work all day, all night. It's an automated system that is going to help remove you from those data broker websites and all the searchable databases that are online so people can find out where you live and who you are and what the heck is going on in your life and whether or not you are worth trying to scam and steal. In 2025, we started seeing AI enter the mix. And so scams are not just increasing in volume, they're also increasing in complexity. There's voice cloning. There are texts that sound like family and friends because they've impersonated the styles that you are. There are emails that are phishing for you with fake bank and so on. And I've gotten these from social media sites trying to get you verified. People who get hit with scams are generally speaking not chosen at random. If you want to make sure that you are not targeted, you can do it by making sure that nobody knows what you're about. And the way you do that is checking out a website like Patriot Protect. That's what we use here. My folks use it. There are other suspendables that use it. My wife and I both have accounts with them. Again, it's patriot-protect.com/KYLE. It's relatively inexpensive. It's less money per month than a Vegas cup of coffee. I can say that pretty definitively, having just had to go buy coffee there and being frustrated. It's a couple dollars a month for the year. Check them out. Make sure you guys protect yourself. Less exposure, more control. Kyle at checkout. It's patriot-protect.com/KYLE. Okay, now let us do the video. Let's go to the video. Let's go to the tape. This is kind of nasty to watch. It's messy. This is the most stabilized view that I can see, and it does appear that the guy was disarmed. The guy being Alex Pretti, the ICU VA nurse. Remember, whenever they get a chance, they always go back to who this guy is and how virtuous he was and what a great human being he is. What I noticed in some of these people is that they have an extreme leftist bend. And oftentimes we also see that they don't have that bacon cheeseburger nationalism position, which means they don't actually ascribe to the dominant culture in America. As far as I can tell, this guy was not married, had no children. And so he picked a mission. Doesn't mean he should have died for it. I feel very uncomfortable with the fact that that happened. So allow me to show you the video. Let's see what happens.
Honestly.
All right, so you guys are seeing that the scuffle is in slow motion. There's a man standing still. He draws the weapon. And then the camera goes and starts moving. It's a great question. So we're slowing it down. Looks like you've got the guy in the gray hat and the gray jacket, maybe reaching in. And this is the belief that maybe he disarms him from a holster that's right there. I can't tell if that's an open carry or a concealed holster, so we need some context still. Again, none of us know what was going on with this. Looks like he's reaching in and pulling a weapon away. So he's kind of struggling with it. He may have actually thrown magazines out on the ground. We saw that last night on a live stream that I was covering on. And then as you see him pull the weapon, almost simultaneous to the weapon being drawn, you see the shots. And he starts circling. There's one shot. And there's the shootings. I'm going to pause it. I'm going to roll this back. We're going to leave it right here. And here's kind of what I think went on there, although I can't tell. First of all, again, it's too chaotic to know. It's also too chaotic for anybody to watch this in slow motion and think that you know what the officer or the agents involved saw. I don't know that any of them had a clear picture. There's a very real possibility that the shooter, the man who ended up shooting, who's got the black hoodie or the black beanie on, actually saw a hand drawing the gun, but didn't know whose hand it was. I think that's totally reasonable. And then by the time he got on the far side, all he would have seen maybe is, because this is happening in a period of like 1.5 seconds, tops. It's very probable that the guy who did the shooting got on the wrong side, saw skin on gun, gun no longer in holster, or maybe even just guy's hand at holster, and did the shot. Again, it could be justifiable and still be really, really awful. And it also seems like there was probably a discharge of the guy wearing the gray who pulled the gun out. Now, we're assuming that that gun was actually disarmed. I don't know for a fact that it was, but it appears that that is the case. There's multiple different angles on it. And so I don't know the story at the end of the day. Neither do you. By the way, we're going to have to wait, and we're probably not going to see this. I don't think it goes to trial, even though everybody thinks it should. I'm not sure it goes there. Let's talk about what the system is going to look like, and then we'll go into a minute-by-minute timeline as defined by the New York Times, which I always find interesting to see what somebody other than me thinks. First of all, what will happen is they've already done a reconstruction. They've already done interviews of these guys. They've all been sort of segregated and isolated. And then we're going to find out whether or not they're even going to bring forward a charge under the United States Attorney's Office there. Probably not, if I had to guess. The administration has already said what they're willing to do. They have the ultimate decision to decline. There cannot be a state investigation without federal cooperation. And so if the feds decide they're not going to help this out, then that's probably the end of it. It's still tragic. It's still a man who was shot for doing something that many of us would do, which is carry a gun in public. And many of us might choose to film or to document something that's happening that we think is unjust. Whether you agree with what that parameter of justice looks like, it doesn't mean that it's not something you can do. I don't think people should die in this country for doing a thing that they should otherwise be allowed to do in tandem. But I will say, the minute that you start getting involved in any kind of resistance with law enforcement, you're going to start putting yourself in the crosshairs and bad decisions can be made. Because I guarantee you, I'm never in that situation. I'm never going to get involved in trying to resist a bunch of ICE guys doing their job. I'm certainly not going to be there with a bunch of whistles and bullhorns. If so, I'm going to be wearing body armor. It's going to say press on it, and I'm going to have a camera system. I'm going to delineate myself as an observer and not a participant. So once you start participating, things get weird. Let's go to the timeline here. This is from the New York Times. Moment by moment look at the shooting of Alex Pretti. Federal agents shot and killed 37-year-old Minneapolis resident Alex Jeffrey Pretti about 9 a.m. Central Time on Saturday morning. This happened over the weekend. The video was shared by the New York Times with a witness and her lawyer, as well as video footage posted on social media where the agents appeared to fire at least 10 shots in a span of 5 seconds. There's a decent chance that one of those shots was actually shot from his own gun and after being disarmed. Again, I think I'm still in the camp that it looks like a negligent discharge. I can't positively conclude that. But it does seem like the person, nobody moves until that first shot breaks, and it's not a shot that they expect from the law enforcement officer. All right, the footage seems to contradict the Homeland Security account of the encounter. I do think Homeland Security is putting out a narrative that is definitely spin, and I don't necessarily buy it. The agency said it began after an armed individual with a handgun approached law enforcement with the intent to massacre them. I think that's almost objectively false. There may be something that we don't know that they have, but the odds are that he showed up with a firearm. It was in a holster. In my experience, and I've experienced people with firearms in public as a law enforcement officer and not, when I see somebody with a gun in a holster, that's not my enemy. Just a general rule, Kyle Seraphin's rule to go by. When you're looking at people, we always assess threats in 3 ways, right? So law enforcement teaches you that you're going to look at their hands. Hands is where weapons are carried. Their waistband, that's where they're stored, and then their demeanor, their general way that they're presenting themselves. In this case, this guy's on the ground. So hands, probably not easily viewed. Waistband, questionable, looked like it did have a weapon system on it, but demeanor, not necessarily going out to fight them. He actually looked like he was trying to, cover up because he was getting beaten. And I'm not 100% sure why on earth he injected himself there, but he also didn't look like he was presenting himself as a threat. So there we go again. All right, the agent shoves 2 civilians from one side of the street to the other and then pushes them towards a white SUV. So we're looking at this picture here. This is 28 seconds before the shooting. Actually, they're giving you a timeline in seconds, so we can actually look at this. So your first one, Pretti is up here. I've got my cursor on it. He's the guy that's wearing the brown jacket. You've got somebody who's they're calling civilian. Everybody here is a civilian. None of this is military. There's a woman or a non-combatant, we'll call it, in an orange backpack. You've got another person in a brown coat, and then you've got your immigration agent with this guy, Pretti, in all brown walking up. Now we're going to get into 28 seconds before. And this is actually, I don't know where this justification comes in. We talked about this on the live stream I was on last night with the guys over at Trigger Smart. Look at this. Okay, white SUV, sure. There's the orange backpack woman. It's a female. And you've got some agent pushing this person to the ground who does not look like they're stepping into a fight. I don't know why that push happened, but there's a lot of context we're missing. For all I know, she was about to get arrested and they were putting him on the ground, putting her on the ground. Maybe she had already committed a federal felony somewhere else. So that's relevant, potentially. I mean, like I said, this context is lacking. We need 15, 20, 30, 90 minutes beforehand. I don't know why you shove a woman to the ground. I just don't. And I'm not sure how that force is actually justified. So then we move down to 25 seconds before. This is a different angle. So here's the agent who's pepper spraying and also has knocked this woman to the ground. So orange backpack is on the ground. Pretti's holding a phone with an open hand. We can see no gun in. I think this stuff is reasonably assumed that the agents involved in this could see that he had 2 hands up and neither of them owns a gun. And I'll look right here. I don't see a firearm displayed. He was a right hip carrier from what I could tell on the other parts of the video. So he looks like he's concealing. So there was some statements about whether or not he was an open carrier. I don't see that. This looks like a concealed carrier to me. Could be wrong, but that's what I see on this particular piece. Now we move forward 5 more seconds. We're back on the other angle. We've got Pretti who goes to go and maybe help this woman or push her down. I don't know what he's doing. We don't know what the motivation was. They're also on ice, so there's a lot of slipping going on. But here's this video, or this picture, the same agent there that's doing pepper spray. We now have a new agent entering the scene, and a couple others are walking over. But you've got brown coat trying to help woman up from the ground, woman with the orange backpack on the ground in front of the SUV, and Pretti, who eventually is shot, now also grabbing onto the woman. Unknown reasons. We don't have to assume why. All right. They come in from a dash cam video. Somebody was sitting in that SUV and filming. The number of angles from this is actually wild. It does say a lot about what's going on in our modern world. 17 seconds before being shot, you can see that his right hand has like some sort of a brace or a finger glove, and he's carrying his phone, not a weapon. None of this is actually relevant, by the way, when it comes down to whether he's armed or not armed. Or it's all about whether he's accessing the weapon at the time. All right. So we're going to get to 11 seconds before he's being restrained. And then this is where the sort of shit show kind of takes off. You've got a lot of people involved, very little people understand. So the fog of war here is going to be pretty intense. And then they're going to go to this space 1 second before. And they're claiming that this agent here in the black beanie with the face mask on retrieves the weapon from Pretti, appears to pull the gun out. And you've got this other guy unholstering his gun, getting ready to shoot. So I'm sorry, Black Beanie is drawing to shoot. And there's the guy in the gray jacket who is right here in the previous picture, moves in and disarms. So this is going to be a guy wearing plain clothes. He's wearing blue jeans and a gray jacket and a gray hat. Maybe he popped in. I don't know what the protocol is for disarming in this scenario, especially if he's not accessing it. If he's not accessing the weapon system and his hands are where you can see them or they're being controlled. Really hard to say. Anyhow, 1 second before, it appears that the agent moves in and disarms him. And then you've got your shots fired while the guy in the gray, who's wearing the blue jeans and the gray hat, actually has a gun in his hand, potentially Mr. Pretti's gun. None of these things are conclusive. For whatever it's worth, there's the picture as the shot is being fired. So you've got your gun in hand over here, but it's not clear that it's his gun. Could be. But I know some DHS people also carry SIGs that are the exact same way. So none of that stuff is really helpful. Again, we've watched the video and it doesn't tell you anything. All we know is there's a gun in hand. There's someone moving away with a gun. There are other people that are looking like they're throwing some haymakers from underneath. I've seen all the angles. It doesn't tell us conclusively. What I do know is that we've got people saying some really riled up stuff, including the governor, and they're not making this any better. Rather than people say, wait for the investigation, it's a tragedy that someone's life is lost. What we're saying is the feds have occupied our state and that they have no right to do the thing they're doing. These people, as we played I had an entire thumbnail about this. The entirety of the show was pointed towards ICE is carrying out the mission of ICE. And it's not something where we can act like they don't have the ability to do that or that Congress doesn't fund them to do so. Here's Tim Walz saying something that I think is actually adding more fuel to the fire. And I think he actually knows exactly what he's doing here.
Well, as I said last week, this federal occupation of Minnesota long ago stopped being a matter of immigration enforcement. It's a campaign of organized brutality against the people of our state. And today that campaign claimed another life. I've seen the videos from several angles, and it's sickening. Minnesota's justice system will have the last word on this. It must have the last word. As I told the White House in no uncertain terms this morning, the federal government cannot be trusted to lead this investigation. The state will handle it, period.
All right. So first of all, no, they won't. The state has no right to do that. We've talked about it here previously, but the Nagel decision says that a federal agent in pursuit of their duty while executing federal duties is going to be handled by the federal government, period. And if they don't want to share it with the state, they don't have to. People are going to see a comparison here with Derek Chauvin's situation that happened in the same city. And I want to give you the big difference. Chauvin was a state police officer. He was a peace officer, and he was working for the local government. And so when the state went after him, which they did, and they ended up convicting him, DOJ was part of the dog pile. They didn't have the original case, and they didn't have the original jurisdiction. In this case, we have feds involved in a federal operation, and so the original jurisdiction will be federal. If they choose to share information and allow a local prosecution, which does happen in certain jurisdictions and at certain times, then they could. I don't think they're going to. I think there's no evidence that's going to be the case. But what I do see is these people adding fuel to the fire. Now, good for the officer, maybe bad for America, especially because she's very inartful in the way she's saying it. The Secretary of Homeland Security is already sort of justifying the actions and I would say telegraphing to us that the federal government is not going to seek charges and that they are going to defend this guy. It's good for the guy. It may not be good for the cause of justice. And the things she's saying are so sort of ham-handed and so far on a political narrative that everything about that makes me uncomfortable too. You should be able to carry a gun to a protest. That doesn't mean you can fight with a cop. It doesn't mean you can fight with a federal agent. But you should be able to carry a firearm and also have a First Amendment protest or have free speech at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive. You don't get to pick one or the other. And they're kind of leading that way on the Trump administration. Again, that's a problem because I read it right here on their campaign promises. They were going to defend our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and the fundamental freedoms, including freedom of speech, religion, and right to keep and bear arms. Those things are all and statements. Those are not or statements. You get one or the other or the other. So let's hit this thing real quick. Let's listen to Kristi Noem. I got a couple clips of her saying it. I'm going to give full context as best I can.
Thank you so much for doing this and would welcome also any other guidance from Chief Scott. Did the 37-year-old who had a license to carry, did he brandish a gun? And at what point did law enforcement retrieve the gun and also the magazines from him? Can you offer clarity on
this
where
individual
those were found?
showed up to impede a law enforcement operation and assaulted our officers. They responded according to their training and took action to defend the officer's life and those of the public around him. And I don't know of any peaceful protester that shows up with a gun and ammunition rather than a sign. This is a violent riot when you have someone showing up with weapons and are using them to assault law enforcement officers.
Because video appears to show he's...
Yeah, that's factually false. The thing she just said. You can't show up to a peaceful protest carrying a weapon system or extra magazines. I've done it more than once. I'll continue to do that. If I ever show up to a peaceful protest, I'm going to be carrying a weapon system and I'm going to have extra mags. 100% chance of that. I've done it down to the No Kings rally. That does not make it a riot. To show up and being armed in a way that you're allowed to be armed. In this country, we do have a Second Amendment, but more importantly, it means the government can infringe on it. Both Noem and Patel had really bad takes on this, to the point where it's actually unsettling that they're in the positions they're in. And the craziest thing is the person that I keep hearing is the problem in the DOJ, Todd Blanche. He actually had the most sane take of all of them, if you can imagine that. The thing they just said is crazy. You cannot show up to a protest carrying a weapon system that turns it into a violent riot. That is absurd. And again, the FBI director said similar things.
I don't know of any peaceful protester that shows up with a gun and ammunition rather than a sign. This is a violent riot when you have someone showing up with weapons and are using them to assault law enforcement officers.
But as Secretary Noem said, no one who wants to be peaceful shows up at a protest with a firearm that is loaded with 2 full magazines. That is not a peaceful protest.
For those of you that are watching and not just listening, what you just saw there was Mike from Mr. Guns and Gear, his channel, and he was showing how he went to a lawful protest, was exercising his First Amendment rights, and he was handing out free AR-15 magazines to people as a protest in support of the Second Amendment. You can do all of those things at once. There's no question in my mind that that is a false statement. To see 2 people in a position of power in Trump's government that claimed they were going to defend the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and broadly speaking, what all those things were, it's very troubling to me. And there are plenty of examples that happened under the Biden administration and also some of the tyrannical state governments that were going after the Second Amendment rights. When I was living in Virginia, there were regular and repeated, Richmond-based protests where people would come out there and they would open carry firearms. They would do so peacefully, and they would have their fingers off the trigger with a slung rifle. Forget like having one concealed carry. You can absolutely carry and still exhibit First Amendment principles and go out and share that you have a problem with what your government's involved in. That's troubling. So CBS News is covering this, I think, relatively fairly. The headline here is that their killing is a sharp contrast between what Trump officials say and what the video shows. This is an issue in the timeline. If you're going to go out there and try to craft a narrative and the video shows something very different, and Americans can regularly see that you are talking about a guy getting shoved, a woman getting shoved, I don't know how you justify that. That was just on the screen right there in the kind of B-roll up on the top right. I don't know where you get away with some of these tactics. It doesn't mean that there was not a justifiable threat or that the shot was not justified. Again, it doesn't mean I agree with it. Justification has nothing to do with my feelings. It has nothing to do with your feelings. It has nothing to do with the feelings of the people that were there. A objectively reasonable law enforcement officer, knowing what the officer knew who did the shot, seeing what the officer saw who took the shot, and having the only information available to that officer at that time would have to say, yes, a reasonable person could take that shot. That's how it plays out. And again, it's crazy to watch that we have the political right representing this idea that basically tyrannical position on the Second Amendment, which many of us would normally go, oh, that's not okay. If you guys heard the Biden administration say the same thing, you would be up in arms. So for people that are defending this simply because it's quote unquote our guys, I'll refer you back to what GOA guys were telling me when I was in Vegas. Very simply, they're not our guys once they get to DC. We should be skeptical and critical of everybody. I saw something online. A woman responded to me with one of my posts, and she said something to the effect of, it's really weird. She said, I love Trump, but something else. Like, I don't like what he did here. And it's like, well, why do you love Trump? He's a politician. You should judge him based on his outcomes. He told you what his promises are. Is he meeting those promises? Does he get more time on some of them? Sure. Let's evaluate people based on their claims and then their deeds. Let's do it based on their actions. This is Eric Pratt. He is the senior VP at Gun Owners of America. I had a short conversation with him while I was in Las Vegas. Again, this is like one of my big things, is that I really care about the Second Amendment, and I'm something of an absolutist when it comes to the Second Amendment. I think everybody should be able to own. I think people who are convicted felons that have been released from prison, if you're safe enough to be among us, you should be allowed to vote and you should be allowed to carry a firearm. That's my position. You don't have to agree with it. I'm just telling you that I hold those principles and I believe in those principles aggressively. It's really bad when Todd Blanche, who is getting all kinds of aggression from the political right, is calling out like the rest of the Republicans in government and saying that this is an issue. So this is kind of a funny little setup. This is with Caitlin Collins over on CNN.
The truth is, people do have a right to protest patriotically and peacefully while exercising their Second Amendment arms. And I'm really glad that there are people in the administration like Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, who has just unequivocally stated that people they can exercise their Second Amendment and First Amendment rights together. Look, I've attended protest rallies while armed and no one got injured. I've even spoken with law enforcement while armed, even while open carrying. There were no issues. And typically at these rallies or protests, I'll see GOA members and supporters show their appreciation for law enforcement being there and then thank them for their service. And so what we really see is police officers overwhelmingly support the Second Amendment, but it's really important that it be done in a peaceful and patriotic exercise of their First Amendment rights.
All right, couple quick points. Number one, 100% agree with almost everything he said there, and I've almost done all those things too. I've also been out on protests. Not that I was protesting, but I was carrying. I was covering the protest, or I was interested in what people were doing. Usually I went to protests that go to the other side of the coin. I've also been out as a sort of, I've been out as a Fed carrying a weapon system, and I was doing so in plain clothes. And that's not a death sentence either. He's right. It's interesting that he's calling out Todd Blanche and saying that he's doing a great job. I've heard people from Alex Jones and others say that Todd Blanche is the real problem in this administration. This goes to show you that nobody in the Trump administration has a monopoly on being right or being wrong. And in this case, I think Todd Blanche is correct. Here's what he had to say. This is what Eric was praising.
Mr. Blanche, I just want to stay on this, though. Local officials do say Alex Pretti was a lawful gun owner with a permit to carry. The video seems to show at one moment an officer removing a gun in the seconds before Mr. Pretti was shot. Was he disarmed before those shots were fired?
I do not know, and nobody else knows either. That's why we're doing an investigation. It does appear that he was armed. I have heard the same thing you have, that he was lawfully armed, and that's something that's important in this country, and there's nothing wrong with anybody lawfully carrying firearms. But whether he was disarmed or whether he pulled the gun on law enforcement, whether law enforcement saw him go for the gun, what they have to do is they have to protect themselves. They have to protect the public around them, and we'll see what happens happens, but just make no mistake about it. This was an incredibly split-second decision that had to be made by ICE officers confronting a very complicated, violent situation with not a single local law enforcement officer in sight.
Okay, couple of really important points on that one. It was a violent situation. I think that the evidence shows on video that they instigated that violence, but I don't know what happened beforehand, so I'm open to being wrong about that and finding out that the violence was actually something these people did, and all we did was a very, jump cut. Same story in Renee Good, right? She was just a mom. She was just trying to get out of her own parking spot. She wasn't trying to do anything. Then it's like, okay, well, she was actually obstructing a federal investigation, and she was probably going to be taken and detained and questioned. So let's hold on that one for a second. I'm sure there's broader context. I just don't know what it is. I like that Todd Blanche said he doesn't know either. I don't know for a fact that that this guy had his weapon removed. It looked like he might have. I can't tell from that grainy video, but we might be wrong. They might have recovered it from his hand, for all I know. So whether he was disarmed or not, I'm willing to be convinced either way. I'm fine with that being the case. I'm fine with this being a bad shoot. It doesn't. I have no vested interest in believing it one way or another. I do think that when you are armed and you decide to go and engage with law enforcement, which I have done, you have a much higher burden of responsibility on you to be very cautious if you want to safely leave that experience. They have a charter to act and defend themselves. They are theoretically part of the state, which is supposed to have a monopoly on violence. I am very careful. I have engaged with local law enforcement and state law enforcement while an FBI agent in plain clothes with a not very visible law enforcement presence. You wouldn't necessarily know. I'm wearing jeans and a t-shirt. How do you know who I am when I'm carrying? And I've been very cautious about that. I've also done it since then. And anybody who's ever been pulled over while carrying a weapon, or anybody that's ever come face to face and had a conversation with a cop while carrying a weapon, especially if it's some sort of like a detentions type scenario, you got to be really cautious. I mean, it's hands open. It's hands on chest in a way that's non-threatening. I very, very much do not give up ground, but I do not make gestures towards. There's an entire series of case law that is geared towards decisions known as furtive movements. You guys can Google this after the fact if you're interested. Furtive movements are movements that are quick, they are instinctive oftentimes, and they can look like you are going after a weapon system, even if you're not. Furtive movements can involve quickly retrieving your phone or your wallet. It doesn't mean that you're going to get shot for it, but it means that they might be justified if they did. A furtive movement is something that you want to avoid when you're dealing with law enforcement and you're armed. And I would think people who carry weapons are a little bit more responsible about that. I want to quickly go over who this guy is, because that seems relevant, what we know about Alex Pretti, and then we're going to kind of wrap up with a couple more things, and then I think where it's going here, because I think all of this stuff goes in a bad place. Before we get into the story of who this guy is, Alex Pretti, the nurse, let's quickly just ask you guys, if you're watching, make sure you guys give me a thumbs up over on YouTube. I appreciate that. Give us a thumbs up on Rumble. Rumble, guys, YouTube is like far and away better by number of views getting the likes in. So I'd really appreciate it if you guys step up the game over there and let's get this thing done. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. If you guys are looking for something that sits on principle and talks about things, I think, in a fair way. I do have a bias. I'm willing to admit whenever I have them. So join us over there. Subscribe if you're new. And then if you follow us on X, find us on one of the other platforms too. But you can find me at Kyle Seraphin on YouTube and on X. Rumble, it's rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Speaking of my name, you can go to that.com. KyleSeraphin.com will take you to our locals where we do a call-in show. We didn't have one in Vegas last week, so I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys think about a bunch of stuff that's been going on for the last couple of weeks. This Thursday, we do those at 8 p.m. Eastern time, so be sure to join us on that, or you can be a member over on YouTube as well if you want to join the channel. And then lastly, join us on Spotify. If you're just listening, if you're just hearing all this stuff and you can't see in the visuals, KyleSeraphinShow.com. That's where you find it. KyleSeraphinShow.com. Very easy to find. That's the Spotify. You can always search us on Spotify. Subscribe over there as well. And that way, if you're listening, you can switch between audio and video. It's a better experience. You can fast forward through commercials if you like. There are some ads, but you can fast forward through them if you want to. So I don't mind. And you may hear one of those ads right now. Again, share, like, subscribe, etc., etc. I don't want to belabor that any further. Let's go to this guy's story. This is ABC reporting about it. Investigators are gathering evidence as of Saturday about the second fatal shooting in a month of an American citizen in Minneapolis at the hands of federal agents. More information is emerging about the victim, Alex Pretti. 37 years old, worked for the Minneapolis VA system as an ICU nurse. He was a member of the local chapter of their union, which represents professional employees affiliated with the VA health system. It's called the AFGE Professional Local 3669. You have a picture of him here that is being shown while he was out doing some mountain biking and wearing a very offensive outfit. I just say that because I really don't like cycling outfits, but yeah, he's got like kind of the tight pants, the cycling shoes, the bike helmet and all that kind of stuff. That says nothing about whether someone should be shot. I'm just making light of a scenario that cyclists who wear these things. Guys, what are you doing? All right. The union said a member of our union lost their life today, and this alone is devastating. Our hearts are heavy, and we're stricken with grief for this tragedy that's befallen one of our own. Interesting that they went straight to a union. Where's this guy's family? No wife, no kids to speak of that we can tell. Interesting that the union is the first one to give it. Multiple videos show the confrontation, spraying him with a substance, so he was probably hit with OC. Again, OC also is involved in this. And if you guys have never been sprayed with the capsaicin spray, it's a real bummer, and it can really change the way that people think and the way that they act. So don't be surprised if you find out that that was part of the fog of war. Almost everybody, when you spray anybody, everybody gets a little bit of it. OC is pepper spray. There's a very real possibility. Let me see if I can actually put it back up on screen, and we'll mute the clip as I go over to it. Hold on a second here. Let's do this real quick. So as you guys are watching this video play out, this was just after a pepper spray situation. And when you start spraying somebody with pepper spray, it gets in the air and it gets everybody. So it hits eyes, it hits face, it burns, and all of it does is it constricts your field of view. It stops your ability to make great decisions sometimes. Some people have a hard time breathing, so they end up with kind of like a more amped up sympathetic nervous system response, that more adrenaline dumped and so on. So all of that stuff also plays in there. Multiple different like long sprays were done from this canister. And that's also going to come into play. That's just my guess. I don't know for a fact that that's going to be a factor in this, but I suspect it will be. So being pepper sprayed is a deal. All right, so here's pictures more. Again, it's an evolving situation. We had the Border Patrol commander issue a statement. I can play that for you guys as well. If I don't play it today, you can find it over at kyleseraphin.com, because I want you to see the reaction of all the officials. The people who are the most sane have been in law enforcement, from what I can tell. The people who are the least sane all tend to be politicians. Take that for whatever it's worth. There's some really bad takes that are going on out there. They said he works as a nurse. He was issued his nursing license in 2021. It's been active up until March of 2026, so he was still in good standing. He served as a junior scientist in their medical lab, whatever the heck that means from his LinkedIn profile. One of the doctors says that it's galling and enraging that he was shot. This is someone who worked with him. The person's name is Dmitry Dragonyak. I love seeing how many non-pronounceable and non-American names we have. That's just a side sort of reference that I've seen. As a bacon cheeseburger nationalist, I really wish people had more pronounceable names in America. It didn't used to be the case, by the way. People would actually make up fake names to sound American. Now they love these, whatever their ethnic name is. All right, he said, I don't understand how you can put a label on someone without talking to someone who knew him. They seem to be dropping out of absolutely nothing. Showing him more pictures mountain biking. He was the type of person that you'd enjoy being around. This notion, he was helpful, he was smiling, he was joking, labeling him a terrorist. It's galling. Yeah, I don't think this guy was a terrorist, for whatever it's worth, guys. Showing up with a gun at a protest does not equal terrorist. Not to me. If it does to you, I think you need to get your definitions in line. There is, in fact, a definition of domestic terrorism. We'll talk about that later on this week. There are 3 things that it takes to be a domestic terrorist in the United States, according to the FBI, which is as good authority as anything. Showing up to a protest. It's not it. It's not there. All right. A couple of other little people being quoted. There's a Facebook post. Said one of the people that was the family member of a patient that he dealt with who died at the VA. Again, no family. No family at all being quoted. And that's only interesting to me in so much as I do think that we talked the other day about women having this misplaced empathy and misplaced instinct about what their person, their purpose in the world is. I think we all have a purpose. Not everybody is meant to have kids. I get that. But a lot of people, historically speaking, the physical purpose for you being on the earth was to procreate and to continue your genetic lineage. We're actually wired for that. Almost all animals do this. So I've got this video of this woman who shows me kind of the scary output. This is what happens when people have kind of broken with their biological instinct. They don't have that purpose, that future mindset, which is very Western. Protecting women, protecting children, protecting the future. That's the reason why we look forward to something and making sure that the next generation has it better than we have it. There has to be a next generation for that to be otherwise, why does it matter? Honestly, if there is no next generation and you're not responsible for them, then what does the next generation matter at all? Why are you trying to improve things here on this earth? Is it just for yourself? Is it just some sort of it's some sort of masturbatorial exercise? This woman that I'm about to play you, it strikes me in a really heavy way. Part one, she desperately needs a man to set guardrails. If you have a wife that is like this, men, you need to protect her from her instincts. It is your duty. Legitimately, you have no other option but to protect her from this terrible instinct this woman has. And then you'll notice she doesn't mention any children as well. So a lot of these childless women, and that's not calling them out for being bad people. It just means that for whatever reason, they don't have children. A lot of them bought into some really awful ideas that our society pushed. And when they did, that maternal instinct is going to come out somewhere. In this woman's, it comes out for unknown, unnamed, illegal aliens who are involved in horrific crimes that she has no idea about. If you've never gone after illegals and you don't know what kind of bad things that some of these people being deported have done, then what are you doing? We've gone after significant numbers of MS-13 guys. They're all in their late teens and early 20s. They're all some of the worst human beings you could think of that were involved in trafficking, sex trafficking like teenage girls. Girls that showed up to hang out with a gang one night, got the crap beaten out of them, and then told if you ever leave, we will kill you and we'll kill your family, and then prostituted them out until they died. Those people do not deserve your compassion. They don't deserve your feminine instincts and your maternal instincts, but there's a lot of that goes on. And so this woman is a great example of it. Listen to all the kind of like red flags she's waving at you. Somebody pointed out to me, she can't be saved. Yeah, at this point, she probably can't be, but she is a pretty good indication of where we should be looking out for women if you're a man in this society today.
I had to have a very hard conversation with my spouse this morning in light of another murder by ICE agents of an American citizen who was exercising his constitutional rights to observe and to legally carry defense on himself. And I was basically like, hey, I think we need to make sure we're on the same page for what we do if and when this comes to our community. He knows that I've been working on some other things, but I was like, I want to make sure that we're on the same page. And he asked me, he's like, if they come here, are you going to be out there?
I'm going to pause it real quickly. This is not a question that's appropriate. There should be a statement here. If they come here, you're not going to go out there. Would you let your friends go do this sort of thing? Why would you let your spouse put themselves willingly in harm's way for some stupid idea that they can't change? The federal agents have a lawful requirement to go do what they're doing. That's just it. Unless they're going to refuse their lawful orders, which they totally can do. And by the way, I applaud people that want to exercise a moment of conscience, whatever that may be, whether it's refusing a COVID shot like I did, whether you say, hey, you know what? I work for ICE, but I don't actually believe in deporting people. Fine. Okay. You found the wrong agency. Weird for you, but you can do that. They can leave at any time. But don't go put yourself in the position where you're going to get shot because you're violently or physically resisting and you're going to get on the wrong end of a federal gun that's going to be justified in being used on you. This woman's husband needs to be laying down the law in his house, unfortunately. And I don't say that in a mean way. It's just like for her own good, for love for your spouse. If your spouse has these bad ideas, help them, please.
And I said, you know me, you know who you married, and you know I do not stay quiet when people in power abuse their power to harm others. You know that about me.
There's nothing about what's been going on that is necessarily an abuse of power. So this is this LARPy syndrome where people have main character syndrome. They all think that they're heroes in some movie resisting some sort of fake tyranny. They think they're the same as the person standing out in front of the tank in Tiananmen Square or something. Maybe because we don't have such great conflict in our lifetimes, that life is too easy. People are inventing conflict with places that don't exist. You don't have a conflict with the federal government doing the job of immigration. Obama got rid of more people. So did Clinton. This wasn't an issue until they turned it into something. And you're so impressionable that you decided to make it about you and you decided to make it about justice for scumbags. We'll play some of the things. Pam Bondi, for as bad as she did on this, and she did a really bad job, by the way, messaging. Pam Bondi goes out and does the right thing and lays out, here's some of the people that we've grabbed. Even the illegal aliens that are just involved in DUI. Do you know how many DUI stories from illegal aliens that have killed American citizens that were driving unlawfully on our roads drunk because they're used to driving in some third world shithole where it didn't matter what you did in your car? There's a lot of them. They have no business being here. It doesn't matter if they're driving a truck or if they're driving a pickup truck. If they're driving a semi and they smash through and kill a bunch of people because they made an illegal turn, or because they're driving drunk on the wrong side of the highway and they go headfirst into some family. Like, you don't have a right to be here if you're a scumbag. This woman is protecting all of that. And it sounds ridiculous to me.
You've seen it. You've seen me do that. And I don't think I could live with myself if I didn't. And he was quiet for a while. And then he just said, I don't want them to shoot you. And I said, I don't really want that either, but I've got to do something good with this body I was born into.
Just listen to those words, by the way. This body that I was born into, this is all such like paganistic crap.
And this one life, you know?
I mean, like YOLO, right? Anyway, this kind of stuff is scary because these people actually do think that they're the hero in this movie that they're living in. And she thinks that she's compelled to do something ridiculous. Again, if you have someone like this in your life, if it's a family member, if it's a sister or a mother, or if you have a wife, help them. They're obviously looking for purpose. Maybe drag them to church. Maybe that's what they need. And they are getting reassured by the worst people. Again, I told you, politicians are doing this for clear political hay. Here's Eric Swalwell, who I endorsed for governor of California. Not because I like Eric Swalwell, not because I want good things for California. I just figure if we're going to do dumb shit, excuse my language, if we're going to do dumb things, let's just do dumb things all the way. Let's accelerate and find out what's at the end of this road. I hate anticipation. I don't like the suspense. I just want to see where it goes. So I'm down with whatever Eric Swalwell wants to do in California. All the dumb things, let's do all the dumb things. Especially because I don't live in California. For those of you that live in California, I already apologized. I already said I'm sorry. I'll say it again. I'm sorry. But I do want the bad things to happen sooner so we can get to whatever the next phase is. Eric Swalwell is going to tell you exactly what I said at the beginning of this program. At the end of this, Democrats at some point will take power back. And the Democratic Party has gone further left than I can fathom in my lifetime. Because 25 years ago, a Democrat would basically be eating a bacon cheeseburger with me and saying we need to get the illegals out of this thing. And we'd be having an argument about abortion, about whether safe, legal, and rare is an appropriate way to discuss the killing of the unborn, or whether or not we need to outlaw it, outright. And I'm not even sure where I was at 18 or 19 years old. I don't remember where I sat on abortion. Somewhere in the middle. I really wasn't that strong on it until I had kids. It just didn't mean that much to me. So 25 years ago, the Democrats and I would have had very little ground between us. Now it is a vast wasteland between whatever they are and wherever I'm sitting. And I didn't move that much. I've hardened up some positions based on life experience. I've hardened up some positions based on earning and paying taxes, which I'm not a big fan of. I've changed some thoughts about the way the military works. I had some pretty rough experiences in the federal government, so I've never been a big fan of government, but I'm way, way more aggressive on anti-government stances now. So there's that. But I'm going to tell you something. These people are going to go after the folks that are doing their freaking job. And they're not doing it like an immoral job. These are not people that are out there enforcing COVID restrictions. These are not people that are out there that are firing off all the folks inside their agency because they refuse to, live by their own principles. That's not what's happening here. They're doing one of the actual justifiable, understandable jobs of the federal government, which is to protect the national border. That seems like you shouldn't even have to have that discussion, but we do. And deport people that came here illegally. These are really clear violations of federal law. ICE, of all the agencies out there that you're having a hard time getting behind, The mission set that they do is so not controversial. It's really not. If you violate American law and you stay over a visa or something else, then you have to go somewhere else. You can't hang out here. Swalwell wants you to quit. You can do that, by the way, 100%. If people want to quit, do it. But he's doing it as a threat because they are going to come after these people. And I think unless there's blanket pardons and self-pardons and all kinds of other shenanigans that basically just make this whole thing more of a visible charade than it already is, if they don't do that under the Trump administration as he leaves, pretty confident we're going to be experiencing total personnel warfare. As Dan Bongino promised, I think Democrats will actually do it. I think they will get the FBI as it stands today, and they will hunt down ICE agents and people who participated in ICE raids, whether they be CBP or even other FBI agents, and they will purge those people from federal service. And that will happen in about 3 short years if things go the way that they look that they're going. Here's Swalwell making the promise. You tell me if he's saying otherwise.
So my advice to ICE, just quit. Walk off the job. For this will forever haunt you. Civilized societies don't have mass militias swarming our streets, but Donald Trump has turned our communities into war zones. Trump's turned ICE into an angry army of cocked weapons roaming our streets with their safeties filed off. So here are the rules when I'm governor. If you refuse to unmask, you'll lose your driver's license. If you work for ICE, you're disqualified from ever working for the state. I will use every statute to keep you off the streets, every power to protect the people. And to ICE agents, you don't wear your mask just for anonymity. You wear your mask for moral cover. It hides your identity from us, but also your humanity from yourself. It allows you to commit atrocities. So my advice to ICE, quit, walk off, and do it now, before you kill another nurse named Pretti or a mom named Good.
Yeah, that's a campaign ad, obviously, right? So that says a couple of things about it. Number one, he's making a promise. And number two, he thinks there's a market in California for people to think that that is a morally strong and capable, leadership-oriented position to hold. Right? That's why he does that. He didn't do that because he thought there was he wasn't trying to convince somebody. He's trying to signal to people who already think that, I'm your guy. That's how politics works. That's pretty dark. And he's not the only one. There's a reason why I don't live in California. It's a beautiful state, folks. It's really beautiful. It's the state of my birth, even though it's not the state of my upbringing. It's a gorgeous place to live. It's got mountains. It's got forests. It's got deserts. It's got beaches. It's got beautiful vistas. Like California is a really beautiful place to be, where you can be from sand to slopes in a couple hours. Those of you who live there know. You also experience tyranny and you let them decide how you can live your freedoms. And I don't do that. That's not something I'm ever interested in doing. When I go to California, I'm immediately violating whatever California laws are. And it's very infrequent that I go there on purpose. I don't voluntarily leave the United States. And I don't think California is part of the America that I'm living in. Nor is New York, nor is New Jersey, nor is Delaware or any of these other places, Massachusetts and so on. I don't go there on purpose. Because crazy people live there. Crazy people who have a voting majority or who at least captured the voting system. Look at this. Number 19 of the Donald Trump Agenda 47. Secure our elections, same-day voting, voter ID, paper ballots, proof of citizenship. If only we could do that and see whether or not the people of New York, the people of Oregon, Washington, California, etc., New Jersey, Delaware, Massachusetts really, really do outnumber. The crazy people outnumber the sane people. That may be the case, but I don't know. And our elections seem pretty freaking fake to me. So I don't go those places. Somebody asked me the other day why I don't go there. I just go, look, I don't have a passport. I can't go to California or Washington or Oregon. I can't go to New York. And luckily, I'm avoiding people like this. This is a former congressman from New York. This is Jamal Bowman. We've made fun of him before. He was one of the male members of the quote-unquote squad, which is the hard left side of the Democrat Party. He's getting real ramped up, too. He's still making political commentary. Lovely. Again, they're not saying this because they think that this is an opportunity to convince you. They're saying this because they're virtue signaling to gain audience and political clout. I'm sure he'll run for office again. I'm sure he's not done.
It's time to shut this shit down, yo. It's time to shut it down. This entire system First, Renee Good, now Alex Pretti. Rest in peace to both of them. State-sanctioned lynching and murder is happening under this administration. We need governors, mayors, every elected official to step up and do what's necessary to shut ICE down. Abolish them, defund them, whatever the fuck need to be done, they gotta go. Impeach Trump, bitch-ass Republicans, yo. The fuck are y'all doing over there? Y'all support fascism and this bullshit? Yo, we better not ever vote for any of these clowns ever again. And Democrats use any means necessary to shut it down. Schumer.
I got sick of it. That's what it takes to get a PhD in America today, which tells you exactly how much I think about having a PhD and what that says about your intellect. I don't know what that was. That was not particularly strong. So, I told you that Bondi did a decent job at least messaging what kind of scumbags we're talking about here when the women are stepping up and putting their liberty and their sacred honor on the line and what they're going to do with quote unquote this body on this planet at this time or whatever else they're doing. These are the people that you're protecting. This is what the sanctuary policies protect. And we're going to get into the final sort of stage of what did the people say and who's finally saying the quiet part out loud. And then again, I told you the most sensible person in the entire room so far that I can tell, it's going to be the police chief coming out of Chicago. How interesting. Here's Bondi telling you what kind of scumbags are out there.
Mr. Blanche, I just want to stay on this, though. Local officials.
That is not Bondi. That was Todd Blanche. Here's Bondi.
Let me just get your initial thoughts of what's happened here in Minneapolis in the last couple of hours.
Well, why this has happened in Minneapolis is because you have a mayor, you have a governor who has declared Minneapolis a sanctuary city, saying, bring your worst of the worst to Minneapolis. You're invited here. We will protect you. Aisha, these are the arrests. These are just the arrests that ICE has been making. And that's why Donald Trump has ICE in Minneapolis to protect the citizens. Sodomy of a boy, strong arm robbery. Sexual assault, sodomy of a girl under the age of 16. Rape, 12-year-old girl. Strong arm, rape, ag assault. Convicted rape, child fondling. These are all the illegals that Joe Biden was letting into our country. And they were all going to Minneapolis because the mayor, the governor, the AG, they were protecting them. And Donald Trump is going to protect the citizens of our country.
Oh, good. I was afraid she wasn't going to get that knob slobbery in, but they actually did. So fantastic job. It's obviously Donald Trump's great leadership that's solving these problems. Again, Bondi is correct in this one. She's saying things that I'm sure are true. The people they're going after are scumbags, and there's a lot of scumbags in this country. So good. I don't like the way she delivers it. I always hate it. It feels like she's doing bad WWE, like she's slightly out of breath and she's delivering the message with breathing pauses in the wrong places for normal people. Again, bad theater. But luckily, she's going to do something about it. I actually have that here. I think we should ask Alex to give us a little warning. Guys, get excited because we're about to have a solution coming.
Breaking exclusive. Breaking exclusive. Breaking exclusive.
Here it comes. What are we going to do, Pam?
Rape, homicide, manslaughter. That's who they're trying to protect in Minnesota. I do not understand these people. We sent Governor Walz a very strong letter today. We had been working on this letter. We got it out saying that he better support President Trump. He better support the men and women in law enforcement because if he doesn't, we are. And that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah. We sent him a letter. She did the meme, didn't she? We sent him a very strong letter, not just a letter, not just a strongly worded letter, but a very strongly worded letter. We got you. Checkmate. Tim Walz. That's so ridiculous. Even Tim Walz, who is a very effeminate man, as far as I can tell. He's like the dancing queen from ABBA, does weird things like this and like shakes his hands in awkward, non-masculine ways. And even Tim Walz, who can't load a shotgun, even that he owns. Tim Walz is able to dunk on Pam Bondi because she just said, we're sending you a very strongly worded letter. Where are the consent decrees? Where is the DOJ coming in and shutting down police departments in that way? You remember that the Biden administration had no problem coming in and stomping on them. The Obama administration did the same thing. Consent decrees were ubiquitous when they didn't like how local law enforcement was done. And they pulled money and they pulled funding and all this other kind of stuff. What are we doing here? Apparently, we're waiting to be made fun of. So I've got Tim Walz' reaction to that in just 1 second. As we do, make sure you guys are liking the video. Rumble, you guys know how to do it. YouTube, same request. Subscribe if you are new to the channel, if you've never heard it before. If you disagree with me, I like that, by the way. I love it when people don't agree with me. I watch your chat. Not all of you guys are on board with everything I've said. Totally acceptable here. You're in a community where we're going to have reasonable and honest dissent. And by the way, the reason that's important is because not everybody is going to agree with everything you say, including you. Some of you may change your mind watching this. Some of you may change my mind by your comments. Go ahead and comment below too if you guys have a thought on it. Let's do Tim Walz winning the war of words with Pam Bondi. How much of a bummer that is. You ready?
Walz, you got a letter from Attorney General Pam Bondi making several demands, I guess you would call them, regarding sanctuary cities, regarding fraud and voter rolls. Your response to that, and is there anything you can do to meet the Trump administration, at least part of the way, to try to turn this temperature?
Well, first of all, it's not a serious attempt, and the Attorney General's in that. And I would thank the local folks and Commissioner Snell. Thank you to you and your team over there. In that letter, they talked about, you need to hand people over who are in your jails. They're taking credit for people that we've had in jail for a long time. We always hand them over, and the commissioner very clearly. So they're lying. They're lying. This has nothing to do with fraud, as the Attorney General said. They're not sending us forensic accountants, and these are things that have been. We're dealing with now and have been for quite some time. So look, it's not a serious attempt to get at this. The way to fix this is get these folks out of here. We've continued to work with them. They asked us for these numbers. We provided them. We continue to show they're not serious. And look, I think everybody understands what the last request was, totally unrelated to anything on the voter files. This is, again, as the Attorney General said, Donald Trump telling everybody that the election was rigged, who started all this nightmare for America. Has nothing to do with it. And I would just give a pro tip to the Attorney General. There's 2 million documents in the Epstein files we're still waiting on. Go ahead and work on those.
It's a pretty good dunk, actually, when it comes down to it, because, yeah, there's still a bunch of Epstein files we'd like to see. That is something that will continue to haunt these people. It's their own fault. They should have done better, and they didn't. But it's interesting. You got the governor saying that they actually did cooperate with and share information with the federal authorities. And it turns out his AG has said exactly the opposite of that. The real scary thing that I see, and there were riots last night outside the hotel of the ICE agents that are involved in doing this operation. At least one of the hotels looked like it got completely destroyed. They had armed guards from Border Patrol standing outside, and the guy was screaming something simple. Where are the locals? Where the hell are they? What's going on here? Why are you abandoning the safety of your own people? So I'm going to continue to message that I think I got a problem. The problem is, I don't care whether you like what ICE is doing or not. Your responsibility to your local populace does not go away simply because ICE is carrying out federal operations in your area. And you should be blocking people using crowd control and traffic control to keep them out of these dangerous situations so we don't have shootings. I do think that people like the police chief in Minneapolis, the mayor in Minneapolis, the governor, and even the AG here, they're 100% okay with some people dying when they don't need to, because it furthers their political agenda. And I don't think you can convince me otherwise. Here's the AG saying the opposite of what his boss or what the governor has to say about this. And so this seems problematic.
DHS says Minnesota isn't cooperating with ICE detainers or requests for assistance. When ICE asks for help, why does Minnesota sometimes say no?
Well, because it's the law, right? I mean, it depends on the help that they're asking for. If someone who ICE might potentially be interested in, if that person gets arrested on, say, a DUI, our courts don't have the legal authority to hold them once the court has said they're to be released.
DHS says you're not cooperating. You say we're following the law as it's written.
Right. And so they're asking us to join them in breaking the law, and we can't do that. We believe in upholding the law. We believe in the rule of law.
But Mr. Attorney General, in Hennepin County, and I've spoken with DeWanna
Right.
Witt, who's the sheriff there.
Right.
They do not notify ICE when someone is being released back into the community. Now, the Department of Corrections does, but DHS says if every county in the state just coordinated with ICE, more federal agents could go home. ICE doesn't have to conduct raids in the street. What's your response to that?
My response is, you brought all these people before. So to say now, oh, if we just got cooperation, we'd leave, that's not true. They came here.
Yes, it is. And the reason you know that is because it doesn't happen in other places. It's not happening in Texas. It's not happening in Alabama. It doesn't happen in Louisiana or in Florida or in Georgia. It doesn't happen in Tennessee. It doesn't happen in Kentucky. If you help get rid of people, then you are a fulsome multiplier against this mission, which is lawful. And so then you don't have to do this. The reason that they're surging into blue areas, it's not because they're trying to provoke, at least as I understand it. It's because they have cooperation with locals in places like where I live. And so you don't have to have this. And let's be real, they actually do benefit from this outrage. They benefit from all of the drumming up of political support because that's what you're trying to get your base excited about so you can win midterms. And it's probably gone too far. Here's the police chief in Minneapolis. This is Brian O'Hara. I'm going to give you this, and then I'm going to tell you the right answer, which I think is actually totally reasonable. Coming out of Chicago, as I said, out of all places. Here is the chief of local police that's not cooperating with ICE saying what I think we all understand. It's gone too far now, so it doesn't really matter what's right or wrong.
From what you have seen in the public space and heard from federal officials, is there any evidence that you know of that Pretti was assaulting the federal officers as the Border Patrol chief claims?
Well, I've seen the videos just as thousands of people around the country have, and the videos speak for themselves. I think it's deeply concerning, the things that are being said. This is an individual that was a city resident. It appears that he was present, exercising his First Amendment rights to record law enforcement activity, and also exercising his Second Amendment rights to lawfully be armed in a public space in the city. So I think very obviously there are serious questions that are being raised. And I think the greater issue is, even if there is an investigation that ultimately proves that at the time of the shooting it was legally justified, I don't think that even matters at this point, because there is so much outrage and concern around what is happening in the city.
What do you mean it doesn't matter at this point? You mean the situation on the ground is already, the impression is left?
People have had enough. This is the third shooting now in less than 3 weeks. The Minneapolis Police Department went the entire year last year recovering about 900 guns from the street, arresting hundreds and hundreds of violent offenders, and we didn't shoot anyone. And now this is the second American citizen that's been killed. It's the third shooting within 3 weeks. People have been speaking out, saying that this was going to happen again. And I think everyone is kind of waiting for folks on both sides to come together and just figure this thing out. This is not sustainable. This police department has only 600 police officers. We are stretched incredibly thin. This is taking an enormous toll trying to manage all of this chaos on top of having to be the police department for a major city. It's too much.
Isn't it fun? They want the chaos. They're doing things that bring about the chaos. They cry about the chaos. He supports the Second Amendment, but he was also touting that they pulled 900 guns off the streets. Which one is it? The nice thing about being politics on the left is that you don't actually have to have any ideological position that doesn't disagree with itself. Doesn't mean the right doesn't do it as well, but I see it more prominently on the left, that cognitive dissonance. And unfortunately, the Trump administration, particularly in the way that things are going now with the messaging you're getting from Bondi, the messaging you're getting from Patel, the messaging we're getting from Kristi Noem, all of those things are giving these people an opportunity to say things about the Second Amendment for the first time ever. They can pretend like they're in favor of it. It's just so frustrating. It's so dumb to watch. But he did say the quiet part out loud. It don't matter anymore. I'm going to say it in a different way. My father, who spent a lot of time in the news business, said this on this program maybe a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, something like that. And it's something I grew up kind of understanding. He said there's this attitude that's going on in America right now. Very simply, do not confuse me with the facts. I already have an opinion. for those of you that are in our live chat right now, some of you, I can see you. I see exactly who you are. We're not going to confuse you with the facts because you already have an opinion. Well, the fact of the matter is that at this point, an opinion on this shooting, it's not appropriate. You can have an opening impression, but if you've already settled in on something and you're going to defend it no matter what, you don't even know all the facts, and I don't either. And I'm very clear about that. I was very clear about it on our live stream last night, and any honest former law enforcement guy or somebody who understands use of force looks at it and goes, yeah, we don't know what the right answer is. The right answer is, the guy probably shouldn't have been there. Buddy was legally allowed to be there. He put himself in a bad situation, but he probably shouldn't have been shot from what I can tell. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of context that's missing. So we got some questions. I got a lot of questions. I have more questions than I have answers in this particular scenario. But I do know that I have principles, and the principles are straight up non-negotiable. I'm a Second Amendment absolutist. I'm a First Amendment absolutist. I think you can say anything you want, and I think you should be able to carry a weapon, period, while you're saying it. If you try to go for that weapon in a way that's not legally justified, then you're going to find yourself on the wrong side of it. Maybe you get away with it. Maybe you get shot. Maybe you get arrested. I don't know. There are responsibilities that come along with these rights. You have freedoms to do all kinds of things. Just because you can do them doesn't mean you should. But I do think you should be able to show up to a protest with a firearm and some extra magazines and not be killed for it. And I do think that if you're a law enforcement officer and you are in imminent danger of death or serious physical injury, that you should be able to use deadly force as well. Isn't that troubling? These are all conflicting ideas, and that means that the moment actually matters, the facts actually matter, your opinion should be kind of irrelevant, and we actually do have some case law that's actually not terrible about this. So, homework for anybody that hasn't ever read about furtive movements. If you're not a law enforcement officer, you've never heard that term before, go look up furtive movements. Just do it for yourself. You'll know more things. It might actually, dictate how you interact with cops as you're an armed person in the world. Or maybe it'll change your opinion about what happened there. Or it may give you some shade to understand when this all comes out, why some things happen the way they do. All right, I'm going to give you guys a palate cleanse. One more thing. I'll just ask you again, if you guys don't mind. Find us over on Spotify, KyleSeraphinShow.com. You can follow us on Locals if you guys want to be part of it. We'll be doing a call-in show again on Thursday. We have some stuff from SHOT Show that's going to be behind the scenes. I had a request to do a couple of films at certain booths, and I did a big walkthrough so you guys can get an impression of what the largest firearms trade show in the world looks like, and it's exhausting. I just gave a piece of it, and it's crazy big. Either way, subscribe to the channel. You'll see it on the YouTube subscriber side too, if you guys are a member. Otherwise, like it, share the video with somebody if it might change their mind, or if it changed your mind, or if you just saw some clips that you thought were really good. And here, as kind of a palate cleanse, is a voice of reason. I don't think I've ever done this before, but the voice of reason is coming out of Chicago with a police department uniform on. Here is a sort of long take on what you can and can't do and why you shouldn't go screw with federal agents. Seems really straightforward.
Let me make this clear. Federal agents, ICE, HSI, are officers. They are agents of law enforcement. If you box them in with vehicles, it is reasonable for them to believe that they are being ambushed and that this could end in a deadly situation. And it's reasonable for them to use force based on those conditions. Do not box in any law enforcement officer. You are breaking the law when you do that. And you are putting yourself in danger. Following law enforcement agents around. The question is why? What do you plan on doing? It's also reasonable for them to believe that you're eventually going to do harm to them. If you ram any vehicle, especially that one that contains law enforcement agents, and that's any law enforcement, local, state, federal, county, and you do this intentionally, this is considered deadly force. Deadly force is anything that can cause great bodily harm or death. When you plow into a vehicle that contains law enforcement agents, you're using deadly force. and they can use deadly force in response to stop you. We need to be clear about these laws. We cannot become a society where we just decide to take everything in our own hands and start to commit crimes against law enforcement. It is a crime. You may not like what they're doing. I can understand that there's a lot of emotions out there, but that does not mean that you get to commit a crime, especially.
That's pretty much it. Don't go out there and commit a crime. Don't be a dummy. If you carry a gun, act like an adult, act like a responsible citizen. Understand that all your freedoms all have responsibilities and some personal accountability that comes along with it. So that's the palate cleanse of the day. I hope that makes you have a little bit of a sensible take on that. God bless all of you. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you guys sticking with me, even as this raspy, reedy voice thing goes on. And it'll come back at some point. I'll be able to talk again. Or my kids will keep having me yell at them, and then it won't. And I'll just sound like this forever. I'll turn into Alex Jones without smoking. All right. God bless you guys. See you on the other side of this. I hope you have a great Monday morning as we kick off this week.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.